Hi there! Have you ever wondered what the French titles for Jaws, Ghostbusters, and A Nightmare on Elm Street are? No? Well, I'm gonna tell you anyway. Hey everybody, I'm Jex Russell, and as many of you know, I'm a French Canadian. Please, hold your applause. In fact, here's my real name. There it is, you better read it quick. And as a French Canadian, one thing I always loved growing up was watching French dubs of American movies, either on TV or on VHS, and I would just laugh at the literal translations of some of these titles. Some of them are awesome, while others, not so much. So today we'll be taking a look at some of these translations, and why don't we start with the awesome ones? And you don't get more awesome than Die Hard! That's right, the French title for Die Hard is Piège de Cristal, which translates literally to Crystal Trap. Now let's face it, that is an awesome title for an action movie. And if you remember correctly, towards the end of the film, John McClane has to run barefoot across broken glass. Broken glass? Crystals? Crystal Trap? Die Hard 2, Die Harder becomes 58 minutes pour vivre, or 58 minutes to live. Another solid action movie title. But by Die Hard with a Vengeance, they were clearly running out of ideas with Marche, Crève, Vengeance Définitive, or Walk or Die, the Definitive Vengeance. Doesn't really scream action to me. In fact, it sounds more like Walk Hard. The 1996 Sylvester Stallone action movie Daylight becomes Tunnel de l'Enfer, which translates literally to Tunnel of Hell. And what a badass action movie title that is. It's much more menacing than Daylight. Am I right? And am I the only one that thinks it would be a great title for a metal album? You are going down the tunnel of hell, and there's no going back. Ghostbusters, one of my all-time favorite movies, becomes S.O.S. Fantômes. The translation? S.O.S. Ghosts. It's not a terrible title, it just doesn't have the same ring as Ghostbusters! And speaking of Bill Murray, the summer camp classic Meatballs becomes, and let me catch my breath here, Arrête de ramer, t'es sur le sable. And that translates literally to, stop rowing, you're on the sand. That's not the same thing at all! However, we gotta be honest, who's gonna watch a movie called Boulette de Viande? Staying on the topic of Bill Murray, the golf comedy classic Caddyshack becomes Ami Faut, Faire, which means, in Miami, gotta do it. You gotta do what? The Steven Spielberg classic Jaws becomes Les Dents de la Mer, or The Teeth of the Sea. That just reminds me of the time my grandpa lost his dentures at the beach. Wes Craven's horror classic A Nightmare on Elm Street becomes Les Griffes de la Nuit, and that translates to The Claws of the Night, or simply Night Claws. Huh? Isn't that appropriate? This summer, Freddy Krueger is Night Claws. The Karate Kid becomes Le Moment de Vérité, or The Moment of Truth. Is that a bad title? No. Is it true to the storyline of the film? Well, Weird Science becomes Une Créature de Rêve, a creature of dreams, or dream creature. Could you imagine what the theme song would have sounded like? Dream creature. Eddie Murphy's Coming to America becomes Un Prince à New York, or A Prince in New York, which is a very accurate title that sums up the movie perfectly. And I would just like to add that the French version of Coming to America is absolutely hilarious. Unless, of course, you don't understand French. You probably won't find it very funny. The 1994 rock and roll comedy Airheads becomes Radio Rebelle, or Radio Rebels. And you know what? I think I like that title better. And it's especially fitting considering that the radio station in the film is called KPPX Rebel Radio. Comedy classic Airplane becomes Y a-t-il un pilote dans l'avion, which translates literally to Is there a pilot on the airplane? And that just sums up the plot of the movie perfectly. You don't get more accurate than that. It is a bit of a long title, yes, but a French movie simply called Avion probably wouldn't sell. Sticking to the same formula, Airplane 2 the sequel becomes Y a-t-il enfin un pilote dans l'avion? Is there finally a pilot on the airplane? Speaking of airplanes, Home Alone becomes Maman, j'ai raté l'avion, or Mom, I missed the airplane. No, Kevin, you didn't miss the airplane. Your parents forgot about you, abandoning you completely. I'm sorry. Hey, you want to shoot up some heroin? Was that too far? Hey, on the topic of drugs, Less Than Zero becomes Neige sur Beverly Hills, or Snow on Beverly Hills. Less Than Zero, Snow on Beverly Hills. That's not the same thing at all, but when you take into consideration the movie's strong drug-related subject matter, the reference to snow is rather fitting. The Ashton Kutcher, Sean William Scott mind-numbing comedy Dude, Where's My Car becomes Deux épées en cavale, which basically translates to Two Idiots on the Loose. Very accurate. However, I should add that in France the movie is called Hey mec, elle est où ma caisse? Which is much closer to the movie's original title. American Pie, Folie de Graduation, or Graduation Madness. I got nothing. Scarface becomes Le Balafré. And I gotta be honest, for years I had no idea what this title meant. And finally I decided to look it up, and Balafré means one with a scar. So that works perfectly! One of my favorite anthology movies, Twilight Zone the movie, becomes La Quatrième Dimension, the fourth dimension. Although different, it's the perfect title for a sci-fi fantasy movie, and when you consider that the movie has 4 different stories, it's perfect! Now the next 2 titles were submitted to me by my good friend Lucas Beau. Here we go! 80's favorite adventures in babysitting becomes Escapade d'un soir, which translates to One Night's Escapades, or basically one night stands. Sounds less like the quirky teen comedy that it actually is, and more like a late night TV adult feature. One night stands with Elizabeth Shue? I'd watch that. And on the same note, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead becomes, hold on here, Faut pas dire à maman que la gardienne mange les pissenlits par la racine. Are you ready for this? We can't tell mom the babysitter eats dandelions by the roots. And I'd like to wrap things up today with a cool piece of trivia for you guys. The French version of Rocky 3 is called L'œil du tigre, which translates literally to the eye of the tiger. I mean, that is such a great title for Rocky 3. Am I the only one that thinks this should have been the title for the American version? I mean, at least as a subtitle, like Rocky 3, The Eye of the Tiger. I mean, it's got the theme song already. It's perfect! What's the deal, Stallone? Ok tout le monde, ça complète ma vidéo. Assurez-vous de laisser des commentaires en bas. Whoa! Sorry about that. I got a little caught up in the whole French-English translation thing. That's all the time for me today, guys. Please leave a comment below if you have any cool title translations. I would love to hear it. And as usual, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and you can totally ignore that unlike button. It's useless and purely decorative. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Be excellent to each other.